Welcome to Art in the Mountains. I'm David Sellers, and we're here today on the Young Harris College campus with Chris Fennell from Washington, D.C. Chris, I'm glad you could join us today.
Glad to be here, David.
And tell me a little bit about how you got to Young Harris College.
Wow. Well, a lot of driving.
It is a lot of driving, isn't it?
Yeah, I just finished the last sculpture in Vermont, and so it was like, and then before that I was in Austin, so it's this constant driving around. Actually, I met Dawn Dickens in Atlanta at a conference.
Now, Dawn is a teacher at Young Harris College in the art department.
Yes, and she's in charge of the art department. And I just went to her and said that I wanted to come to the school and teach the students a little bit about what I do.
And what you tell us what you do.
What do I do?
What do you do? He's an arty guy. He's just an arty guy.
Yeah. Thanks. I tear down barns. I tear down old buildings. I find trees that people have taken down that are on their way to the chipper. And I take them apart and then reconfigure them to site-specific sculpture, something that has something to do with the place.
And so since this is a school that is considered a Methodist-affiliated school, then
Right.
That's where the idea for
Well,
the church motif came in?
and that's part of it. Part of it, too, is when I got here, I didn't know what I was going to build. And that's usually what I do. I just get to a place with a big pickup truck, and then I try to find some materials, and I try to walk the place and get a feel for it. And when I was here, I didn't know I would work with trees or buildings, so I just hopped in the truck and drove down 66, and when I got to the end, I took a right, and there was smoke coming across the road.
Oh, I know right where you're talking.
And I glanced to the left, and there's this house where a tree had smashed in and knocked out half of it. And there was a couple there, and I pulled up and I said, "Can I have your house?" And they went, "That'd be great." And then they were like, "We were
Take
just
this
about
house."
to burn it." Right. And then what was great is they told me that it used to be a church, and then it was a classroom. And it was up on in the Pisgah Mountains.
Right.
And her father or grandfather actually took it down in sections, moved it into the valley, reassembled it, and her grandmother lived there. And I think her mother lived there, although the house never had running water in it. So I have this idea of it used to be a church.
A church. And it may have been the Pisgah
Baptist Church.
Baptist Church.
Because it's right up there in the same area that
Okay.
the current church is at. So I knew that it used to be a church. I knew it used to be a classroom. I know I'm building on a site that's a classroom that's affiliated with a church, so it made sense to build a chapel.
So the pieces started falling together.
Yeah, and that's what happens. And also, as I sort of deconstructed this house, I was taking it apart, taking off the roofing, I noticed that it was built of all these giant oak boards.
Beautiful old oak boards, too.
And so that became, because you're looking at a whole house. You have pine siding on it, you have metal roofing, you don't know what you're going to use, but as you take it apart, you see the old building underneath what was the newer construction. And you're like, and it sort of like dawns on you, okay, this is about those old boards. We're going to take those old boards out, forget about everything else. Those are going to be what the sculpture is made out of. And then we knew it was going to be, and it's going to be sort of a church structure. But then I actually had an event happen to where, you get there and you have a whole house.
Right.
You don't know where to start. So typically I take it apart the way it was put together. So last piece on is the ridge cap. You run up there, pull the ridge cap off, you pull off the roofing, and you take off the stringers. And I was standing up there with the rafters. And as I looked down the rafters, they're just standing there completely by themselves. I'm surrounded by these beautiful mountains here. sun's going down, and I go to the first rafter and I push it down. And it was like a little kid pushing it down, and it just went wham, and it made this great arrow. And I went to the next one and I pushed it down, and it fell down. And then the next one. And then I looked at them lined up against the sky above me. And then I just went, wow, this is beautiful. Like, this is worth the whole trip coming out here, the whole thing building the sculpture.
Just the design of what you were seeing.
Well, yeah, just to have, I mean, not only was it beautiful, but also it was just this beautiful moment where everything lines up. What I'm trying to show the viewer is this experience that I had of these rafters falling down.
And it does have kind of that feeling. It's you can feel the feel of the church. And now what kind of statement is going on here? Is do you because I looking at it, I can definitely tell it's a church feeling structure.
Right.
Yet it's kind of moving. There's a lot of movement going on. Do you get any kind of spiritual thoughts about that, or?
You know what's funny is I'm trying to give the viewer an experience of that primal experience that I had of being in that what used to be this sort of scary attic, and then becomes this glorious outdoor space.
Right.
And I'm trying to convey that here. And obviously, there is this, I would say I personally had a spiritual experience doing that. And I feel in touch with God. I don't know when I build these if I can convey a spiritual feeling to the viewer. I don't know. It depends on the viewer. What I'm trying to do here is, again, it's something you see from a distance that's recognizable, whether it be a wave out of a barn or a tornado out of bicycles that I've done in the past, or this where it's a church at a distance and you see it and you understand it and you approach it. But then when you walk through it, you're in this sort of storm of boards flying around, and they're moving, and you look up through the rafters and you're looking up through the trees, and you have maybe that primal experience of, you know, before we had churches we had groves.
Right, people prayed in groves and gathered in groves. You're right.
So you have this experience of temples coming out of groves that were these pillars coming up of tree trunks and the branches, and then building, you know, pillars and building that. And I guess I'm playing off of that. The location of the site. The site is very, very important, and the site has to do with the trees here, this canopy over the top, and then I echo all of that in the structure. But then again, you have these lofty ideas, but then this material, these boards, were going to be bulldozed and burned and trashed.
Oh, they'd been gone by now.
So you have this experience of taking something that is trash, building it into something that's, quote, high art, sculpture, and then you have that sort of going on. I don't know, maybe the really important thing is people walking through it and experiencing it.